I remember thinking, this can't be happening, but it was.
We live in a time where we can't play around with this.
Next, newly released police body cam video showing the last minutes of George Floyd's life as seen by former officer.
It was very disturbing because my son was in the house and I didn't want him seeing it. And all I could think was, this is going to be on the news over and over and over and over again.
Our street, 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 our street.
After the murder of George Floyd, when I had Black and brown colleagues who would call me and say, Jay, I just spent the entire day comforting students who were in my office in tears. They don't understand I have to go home tonight and speak to my family, my children, my Black and brown communities. Who comforts me?
May of 2020, I was serving as the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs at the time of George Floyd's murder. And so one of the things that we started to think about at that time was, how do we respond as legal educators? How do we support our students? How do we fulfill our responsibilities as members of the legal profession in the U.S. constitutional system?
We began to think of what this work would be. It had to be in direct response to the horror of what we saw in those 9 minutes and 46 seconds. It had to be as big as that. It had to be bold, it had to be courageous, and it had to be responsive. I decided in that moment to reach out to 4 Black women deans whom I trusted. Angela Onwuachi-Willig, who was the dean at Boston University School of Law. Carla Pratt, who was the dean at Washburn University School of Law. Danielle Holly, who was then dean at Howard University School of Law. And Kimberly Mutcherson, dean at Rutgers University School of Law.
You know, law schools play an integral role in shaping who our leaders, future leaders, are going to be. So what better place to go to law schools to teach them, right? To have humanity, to think globally, right? With regards to what do we want our Constitution to say? Who do we want to be?
There was always a legal component that would stop any progress, no matter how much we marched, no matter how many petitions we signed, no matter what we did. If the legal profession wasn't behind the things that we were doing, it wasn't going to matter.
Some of our students have agreed to have a conversation about issues related to the profession, their legal education, and how they got to law school. We're privileged that we can listen in. They've agreed to have this conversation in front of us, but we're not participants.
My colleagues helped me in this way by also doing their part and create 2 unanimous faculty resolutions. The first was to condemn violence against Black and brown people in our society. The second resolution was to teach and learn according to anti-racist principles. I said we have to document this because other law schools who signed on to the Law Dean's Anti-Racist Clearinghouse Project will need a template. They'll need a blueprint. So let's write about what we did.
And so we spent a lot of time really thinking about that. And so that led to writing several articles. I wrote one as well as Dermot Groom and Dean Conway and my colleagues Rebecca Saidman-Krause and Rebecca Schreiber. And so it was this 3 kind of part series of articles where we were really unpacking how, as a law school, how, as legal educators, can we start to address the injustices that we're seeing.
We were then asked to present those at a conference at Rutgers University Law School. Remember I mentioned Kimberly Mutcherson? Well, she created a space for us through the Race and Law Review Journal to actually present our templated response to the murder of George Floyd and to systemic racial inequality perpetuated by law. At the presentation was the senior editor at the University of California Press.
So I reached out to Dean Conway by email, not knowing that she would even read it, let alone respond to it the next day. And we were on a Zoom the next week.
In that conversation, she said,
Dean Conway, this is not just a book that you're talking about. This is a book series.
And we need to write a book series that demonstrates step by step how to do what you were able to do at Dickinson Law. And so I took up the challenge. I said, all right, we'll do it. But I said, if we're going to do this work, everyone has to be engaged with it. It cannot be a Dickinson Law project. It has to be bigger than anything we have ever done together in the Legal Academy. And we need a vehicle in which we can come together, not promoting one law school, but engaging all law schools. And that was the initial kernel of the idea of the Antiracist Development Institute.
You know, the Anti-Racist Development Institute, ADI, has been a powerful entity, and both my organization, my employer, LSAC, is a supporting founder, and myself, I'm a co-editor in one of the volume series. ADI is so important in terms of helping the larger legal community, and not just the legal community, education community, but the entire community think more succinctly about, you know, it's not just an individual, but as a collective community, how can we do this, and how can we bring it so it doesn't sit necessarily on this as a scholarly piece, but something that the everyday person would be able to read and absorb and embrace. And so I see my DEI work as it has transformed my own life over time, and now, I mean, it's almost the culmination of that with ADI as the project.
With the Anti-Racist Development Institute, we are putting a foundation under the work that we are doing. That foundation is rooted in coalition. It's rooted in a book series, Building an Anti-Racist Law School, Legal Academy, and Legal Profession. That's how we do the work. We are iterative in our work, tolerant of failure. Everything that the Anti-Racist Development Institute does is not made by those decisions are not made by a singular person. We are truly collaborative in all that we do.
A colleague said that, you know, we went through a first revolution with, 1776. We went through a second revolution in 1865 at the end of chattel slavery. And we went to a third one, in my opinion, with the Civil Rights Acts in the 1960s. I think we're on the tip of the iceberg of another one.
When I saw the ADI and what they were talking to do, I was absolutely blown away. First of all, I was so proud that it was my school, frankly. I think the location, it's almost funny to me that it would spring up here in a fairly conservative area. But it's just so exciting and it's so important.
I could talk about the work that we do, for hours. I could talk about, the book series and the various chapter contributors. And even as I think about the book series, the law professors and law deans and folks that are working on the book series really come to mind. And I think about their energy and their excitement. That excites me, that energizes me. That we are contributing to something that is a huge project, it's a huge undertaking, but it's so necessary. It's what the world needs right now.
So if I were to say, what do we need most in this work? What we need most is just people to engage authentically, but to engage.